We are actually on the air, on the interwebs. Never really know. There's always like a little bit of a light flashing thing, so sometimes there's a little bit of an awkward start.
Yep.
We like awkward. We're Pearl and Andy Lockwood. This is the College Success Show. It's all about college success for less money out of your pocket. It's about college success with zero stress. All the whole process of choosing schools, of essays, figuring out whether you're going to get in, figuring out how the hell you're going to possibly pay for college. That's all the type of stuff that we talk about here.
What's true, what you hear by the water cooler, what's not true, what you hear at the bus
virtual water
stop.
cooler, like
exactly.
Facebook water cooler.
Right.
The gym.
The generic water cooler, if you will.
The umbrella term water cooler. So
the generic bus stop, yes, all of it.
Does the kids actually take buses anymore? I know that we're walkers.
No.
I know there private school kids take buses.
No.
At least around us. Anyway, so yeah, Pearl Lockwood, Andy Lockwood, we're here to talk about college stuff. So if you're just joining us, introduce yourself in the little comments section, and if you have any questions, that's where to put them, whether live or on replay. So today, what I wanted to talk about, there's always an echo, is it's timely because it's the beginning of December, and this is when a lot of kids have started to and are continuing to hear from colleges. The proverbial thick envelope. Colleges still do mail things. There's a lot of email also. But the thick envelope, yes, you got in. The thin envelope, no, you didn't get in. And I thought what we can talk about today is, number one, what happens if you don't get into your number one choice dream college? And number two, if you are younger, if you have a kid who's a junior class of 2019 or even younger than that, some strategies to avoid what we call admissions Armageddon.
Get in.
Is that the reverb?
Yes. Echo. I'm being an echo chamber.
Okay. We have a lot of fun on these shows. So, all right, so let's talk first. So one of the things I always like to think about, actually two things, and I just wrote a column about this, so I'm just going to spare you the time that you need to read through it.
For us.
Yeah, I'll nutshell it. Number one, there's no scientific or objective or any type of non-anecdotal evidence that where you go to college has an effect on how well you'll do after college.
To the contrary, often.
Well, there's evidence both ways,
yeah.
I think. So, but it's like a chicken and the egg type of thing. It's like, is a kid successful because he went to Harvard and then made a fortune, or however you want to define success afterward, or is the fact that the kid was smart enough and hardworking, diligent enough to get into a school like Harvard? Is that the reason why they're successful? It doesn't really matter where they went. So I know.
Or is there some unifying theme and connection between successful people, irrespective of where they've gone to school?
Sure. Yeah. So I don't think we're going to resolve that in the next 20 minutes.
Probably
but those are all really the types of things to think about, particularly in the context of, holy, you know what? I didn't get into my top choice school. Now what? My life is over, because it's really not. So there's all these examples every year that come out in various articles about how people like Warren Buffett were rejected from their top choice business school, and I just saw that Tina Fey was rejected from her top choice school, and there's all sorts of other examples of people who were met with, at the time, probably would seem like huge disappointments, who then turned out things turned out okay for them, and that's probably because again, the stuff we were just talking about at the beginning. They were going to be successful no matter where they went to school.
Right. It's what these people did with that situation of adversity, and that was the character-defining moment between these probable success stories.
Well, sure. I think that happens a lot too. But I think the bigger picture is again, there's no objective scientific evidence that where you go to college will affect your success post college. Now, there's definitely anecdotal evidence in terms of, look, if you're going to go into Wall Street or you're going to go into some field where connections and networking are really, really important, then I get the idea of paying up to go to a Wharton, where you will, if you avail yourself, which is another key thing, you will absolutely have a leg up. But there's schools that are easier to get into that are also good that way. University of Michigan has a great alumni network. Penn State has a terrific alumni network and career center. So so that's another part, and that's sort of overlooked by college rankings or discussions about whether getting to a good school is really worth it, because what all that stuff doesn't really consider is the kids' efforts, what they put in to this type of into the next 4 years of their life. So that's a whole nother thing. And
the opportunity is there at absolutely most of these places, really, wherever they fall on the competitive scale of things. And we can all agree to that. There is probably a satisfactory level of education provided at all of these institutions. The thing that separates is what the kid does with that opportunity and once they're there. And that's both obviously in an academic way and in a honing and figuring out aggressively what they want to do to make a living and get a return on the investment that college is and was. And making sure and shoring up not only internships that turn into jobs while you're there meaningfully and seeking out professors, but also knowing that you're there to network amongst the population of people you'll live among for 4 years and hopefully will be a forever resource of business relationships from people that you knew when you were in college. At least it should be somewhere in a college student's head.
If that's what's important, right? So
of course.
So much of the whole college process is about sort of the the inputs, like getting kids into great colleges, and as opposed to the outputs, like what they're going to get out of it. And in terms of rankings and all this type of stuff that we're talking about, the key thing often is how the kid perceives him or herself. So I'll talk really briefly about this. There's this I said today, a famous study that no one's ever heard of in our field, where these two economists, one was a Princeton guy, I can't remember where the other person was from, where they did two sets of studies, and they tracked a couple different groups of kids. The first study tracked a group of kids that everyone got into in an Ivy League or similar type of elite college, and however, half of them chose that school, and the other half went to like a regular school, not a non-elite school, either because of money or for whatever. After 10 years, the earnings were nearly identical in both sets, which indicated to me that it's not necessarily where you go to college. It's again what you put into it. Okay, the follow-up study, which was more interesting to me, is they tracked a set of kids, one kid who had similar grades and SAT scores and other academic credentials. One set got in to the elite, the Ivy League or elite college, and the other set didn't get in. Mm-hmm. So what do you think happened? After 10 years, same results. And to me, that kind of supports the first thing, that it's not necessarily important where you go to college. It's that you go somewhere to college. But maybe that second set of kids, maybe they saw themselves as belonging at that level, or they were competitive, or maybe they had a chip on their shoulder, or something like that.
Late bloomer.
Well, they worked hard in high school, so they have the same credentials.
Right.
But they just didn't have the same results of getting into college, which, by the way, is a whole other topic, because getting into college is not a meritocracy. It's not about your grades and your scores only. There's other factors. So, the point there, again, is that there doesn't seem to be a proven, there isn't, it's not even seems to be, there's zero proof that it matters where you go to school. Now, that being said, of course you can get a leg up if you go to certain schools, but what you shouldn't do...
And in certain fields.
Right.
It depends what you're doing. Sorry.
What are you sorry about?
Interjecting.
Please, go ahead, share.
Well, just if your goal is, for example, to go to medical school, you need to think about very critically that by the time you're applying for medical school, you have a 3.8 average or better. If you have a greater chance of having that 3.8 or better coming from one school you're applying to as an undergrad versus another, and also there is the cost factor that maybe one of those undergraduate institutions is costing you significantly less than another, and that is on top of the medical school bill you will ultimately incur. But the point is, you need to think, if that's the direction you're heading in, about the choice of undergraduate with those considerations. it's got to be at a place where if you want to go to medical school, you're going to end up with a 3.8 or better to be competitive as a medical student in the United States.
Right, and you're talking about what we call playing the long game, the 40 years, not so much the short game.
Right.
Yeah, so that's a whole other issue. Real quick, a few shout-outs. So I see Cousin Jeff is on. Makes me a little nervous that he's watching, although he did say something nice about the set. Thank you.
Thanks.
Cuz. But usually his comments on Facebook, in terms of TV, are like, "Wow, Tony Romo's stupid." I don't know if you're gonna start taking that out on me now, but hopefully you don't get too cranky toward me. It's the holidays. Hello to Michelle in Michigan. And if you have any questions about any of the stuff that we're talking about, who else is on with us? Pearl, you have that. I just switched screens. You have a handful of people on.
A handful of viewers, yes.
Yeah. So any shout-outs you want to give?
Hi out there. You shouted out to Jeff. And,
we have more, but all right.
Okay.
I see Tony Ann is on also.
Nice.
Hello. So if anyone has comments, this is the time to do it. So even on replay. So all right. So how do you? Well, not always,
no,
but
we're omnipresent.
we get usually a couple hundred or several hundred people viewing on replay. So I don't want you to feel excluded. Okay. Just because you had something.
Look back.
Just because you had something better to do at 12 o'clock Eastern.
Ask away.
Yeah. So let's talk about how to. I'm sorry. Before we talk about how to prevent admissions Armageddon, let's also talk about how we, in our own little corner of the universe, anecdotally, have also seen something very similar to support that doesn't really matter whether you go to college or sometimes whether you even go to college at all, which may sound ironic coming from people who are in the college field and doing a show about college. But in our practice, and Pearl will attest to this, we see the tax returns, and we see the financial profiles of our clients, who include doctors, lawyers, and accountants who make tremendous amounts of money, as well as plumbers, electricians, contractors, auto body guys, you name it. And frankly, what we have noticed, sometimes it's annoying to us because we both went to law school. But for years, we've said to each other, wow, sometimes the people in that latter category, the, quote unquote, lesser schooled, I was going to say lesser educated, but there's a difference between education and schooling. So people who didn't go to the top schools or maybe to school at all,
formal institutions
frequently
of education.
Frequently they're doing better than the people who went to these elite Ivy and other types of schools.
That's true.
Yeah. So, we're not advocating that if you're thinking about college you shouldn't go.
It's just an interesting thing we've picked up along the way that happens to be so. Yeah. We're sharing it with you.
It's like that book, The Millionaire Next Door, which I really recommend. I need to force my kids to read that book. Our kids. Your kids. The gist of it is the real millionaires in America, I think a lot of them are in the red states, in the Midwest, are, they didn't go to the best schools, they don't have the most, attractive, cutting edge businesses. They have businesses like they break rocks and they make concrete, or they tow vehicles or something. So, we have a lot of those types of clients, and those tend to be the ones, I don't know if it's tend, but a surprising percentage of those types of people are doing way better in terms of assets, right? And lack of financial pressure and savings for college.
And living in reality. And passing along reality sometimes to their kids.
Okay, so that's the segue, because I don't know if you saw this here. Because
no, I didn't see anything because I'm short-sighted. I'm waiting
What's
for
that
glasses.
word say with my bad handwriting? So this is how to avoid admissions Armageddon.
Realistic?
Yeah.
Realistic.
Yes.
Oh,
so this
our
is how.
reality
This is how. Not always friendly. This is.
But necessary, like air and water.
Maybe we should call him Mr. Reality. When
like Mr.
Reality
Coffee?
comes in. Yes, you knew where I was going with that. We have a new coffee pot.
First we do Mr. Coffee before we slide into Mr. Reality.
We've had a little bit of a bone of contention here behind the scenes over the whole coffee sitch, because we've gone through a lot of different coffee makers. We ended up with the Keurig for years, but I think it's like kind of instant coffee. It's always like got to be descaled. I think it's good in a pinch.
It's good in a pinch. Quick.
Lately, I thought we were both very happy with Mr. Coffee, who joined our family 2 weeks ago. However, our daughter Sammy, our 7th grader, last night we were having a conversation about something totally unrelated. She asked me what the word virtuoso meant. I said, well, it means like an expert, like a master, kind of like I am at making coffee. And she goes, I don't think you understand that word. And I said, what do you mean? She goes, well, Mommy, doesn't like the coffee so much. Is that true?
We may have discussed it. It may have been the blend. It may have been one
there's
of the
different
earlier
blends.
batches. You're getting there. Today was better.
Today we went with Starbucks French roast.
Yeah.
Okay. So that's Mr. Coffee. Now, Mr. Reality.
They want to know about college. Oh, Mr. Reality, go ahead.
Okay. People drink coffee in college.
Yeah.
So, anyway, here's the deal. This is how you prevent admissions Armageddon. Number one, you have a balanced list. You don't just have a top-heavy list with all these unrealistic, aspirational schools. I'm not saying don't apply to those schools.
Right.
What I am saying is if you're applying to 12 schools, don't make 9 of them like that. Even if, and we see kids like this that we coach and we help, with the whole process. We see kids who really do have better than 50-50 shots at getting into Harvard, Yale, Princeton, and whatever. Mm-hmm. And a lot of times they do. Every year we have kids who get into those crazy schools. However, we always have them say, okay, you should also be applying to schools that are a lot easier to get into. And they always do, because you never know. Even if you if you look at the average grades and scores, the bell curve or whatever, even if you have a very good shot in the abstract mm-hmm. of getting in, you still need to have a plan B and a plan C and so forth. So I can't tell you how many times I've had conversations with families where they'll say, okay, we're going to go visit some colleges. Mm-hmm. Do you have any suggestions in terms of what we should see or whatever? And I'll say, okay, where are you going? I had a family last year say, well, we're going to Boston. We're going to see Harvard and MIT. And I was thinking to myself, okay, wait a minute. Let me just, unless I must be missing something, let me just check my notes. So I quickly brought up my notes on that particular kid. She's, good student, but like an A- student. Good, but not great ACT or SAT scores. You need, even if you have a perfect score for colleges like that, you may not get in. They reject, Harvard brags it rejects 500 kids each year with perfect SATs. So I said, why don't we look at a few other colleges, either on the way or on the way back, like BU, which is still hard to get into, but it's not Harvard or MIT, and a few other schools. So we would never say don't apply, just don't only focus on those schools, because if you don't get in and you end up getting in only to, like schools you just kind of threw in half-heartedly, you never really focused on, you're going to feel disappointed. I think you get over it, but you're going to feel disappointed. What you need to do instead is, to the extent possible, fall in love, or at least fall in like with some of the easier schools, and say things like, you know what, if I had to go here, if the world ended, I didn't get into any of my top 3 or 4 schools, this wouldn't be so bad. Keep an open mind. I was talking over the weekend, we were emailing each other back and forth. We have a client, Scott, mm-hmm. who definitely had grades and scores to get into better, mm-hmm. More highly ranked colleges, and he ended up at Providence College because they gave him a ton of money, mm-hmm. and he just liked it the most out of all the other schools that he applied to. This is a year ago when he got in, mm-hmm. and I was just we were just talking this weekend, and he loves it. It's like great. The best decision he ever made. It's great socially. He's getting amazing grades. Providence has a very strong alumni network. He's already, looking at the internships.
There's a lot to be said also for being a big fish, no matter how you slice it.
Yep.
It really is. It's never a bad place to feel great in terms of when you're trying to feel successful and be on a course of success. When you feel great, it's easier to accomplish success. If you feel like you're clawing your way in someplace sometimes, or you're trying to fit where you don't quite fit.
Yeah. Well, if you manage to, so I think what Pearl's saying is if you manage to get into, like he could have applied to some Ivy League schools, and he was a very good student in high school, but he wasn't that typical caliber kid. If he somehow got into a Cornell or something, maybe he would feel like he was one of the dumbest guys in the school, or he'd worked 5 times as hard as everyone else. He was a great student in high school, but he mm-hmm. wasn't like one of these uber focused, like crazy student type kids. So he knew he didn't belong at schools where he may have been able to get into, but looking beyond just getting in, he knew, and his parents knew, and we all knew, that was not going to be the right fit for him.
And again, circling back to the beginning of the discussion, was he was made a choice in and lives in reality. And that's, you know, when you live in reality and you don't set yourself up for having a big fall back to reality.
Yep.
You cover your bases, you keep your options open, even if some of them at the outset appear to be unpleasant, like lesser schools or however you're choosing to characterize it.
Well, here's something else. Here's a dirty little secret about this whole process. Even when kids end up at a school that's not their top choice school, most of the time they end up loving it. They drink the Kool-Aid, they're rushing the fraternity or sorority if the school still has them. They're they're joining in the protest they have every weekend about whoever's coming to speak. So they end up falling in and loving it. It's called marrying the natives. They end up really liking it most of the time. But look, if that doesn't happen, then you can transfer. But just be careful that you're not transferring to like kind of run away from yourself, because the grass is not always greener. Like I have conversations like this a lot. I can't remember
and this time
you and
of
I
year.
did, where someone. I think a client wanted me to work with a kid on applications to transfer.
Right.
And I said, well, why do they want to transfer? And then it was sort of like, well, she just doesn't really like fit in, there. I'm like, really? What's interesting to me is that it's really mostly the same kids who go to most schools. There's more similarities than differences. And the school she was thinking about putting an application to transfer to was substantially the same type of school as the one she was, not happy at. So I said to the mom, I was like, look, I'll talk to her about that. I'm happy, I'm happy to, to help you out. But at the end of the day, if you retain us, with your money to help someone who's going to just be unhappy at the next place because what she's looking for really doesn't exist. It's it's really within her. It's like the whole
you take
Wizard of Oz. It's in your own backyard the whole
right.
the whole time. It's going to be kind of silly. So that was the gist of my advice, and I don't think she's transferring. We'll see. So anyway, hello to Jean Desposito. Who,
there is definitely and I can't say this enough.
Jim Giddon.
Hi,
Jimmy.
Jim.
Jimmy Giddon, Jennifer Chan.
There is a newness of college in general. The message you always hear is, "Oh, college is the best time of your life. It's the best. It's the greatest. Oh, you have to put everything in its mother into making the choice of college," and we know that better than anybody. So, what happens? The kid lands on Planet College, and then immediately, when touching down, they're not instantly, wow, this is the best time of my life. Wow, I'm so happy. Wow, look at my lifelong friends that I've made in a moment. So that feeling that it grows when you're at college, and all is not lost if your child is homesick, not adjusted. How adjusted should you really feel when you get to college and you're away from anyone you've ever known and loved and your familiarity, and you're now sharing space with someone you've never met or you don't know or you have differences with. There's a lot to adjust to, and then before you're going to, one, get used to it yourself, and then know if you love it or not. So there's not loving school because you're not adjusted to school, period, and then there's not loving a school because of what it doesn't provide for you and what you're looking for academically to pursue, and therefore you're choosing maybe a different school altogether for totally different reasons and sound reasons, frankly.
All right, got a good question here. Actually, I just see another one too. So Michelle from Michigan, who asked a question right after, there's a tie-in here between the two comments, people who don't know each other. I don't think Michelle knows Jean. Michelle asked, how important is which law school a student attends, in terms of impacting their ability to be employed in the field? And Jean attended a fancy schmancy Ivy League law school, and a local undergrad. So she went from a local undergrad and did really well, full scholarship. Can you not kick me? Thanks.
I'm not flirting. I'm just trying to center my hips.
Yeah, but it's distracting. You are flirting, seeking attention. So I think in law school, the saying that we always say a lot is it matters where you finish, not where you start, and that pertains to law school.
It sure does.
It really matters where you go to law school if you want to get a good job.
Yep.
And it's Jean's probably a good example of this. She's a very smart. I assume that had she, I think she actually got into some Ivy League undergrads too, and had she gone there, I still think she would have done well enough, I'm guessing, who knows, and gotten into the law school that she ended up at. But there's a very strong argument for not doing that and staying at the local or the easier, quote unquote, easier level, less competitive level, because your GPA is going to be a lot higher. You still have to test well on the, on the LSAT or whatever, test is required. But it really does matter. So that's a great question. Hello to fake name I am Storm. Still love that one. Jean's asking, any suggestions on how to talk to your child about these kinds of things without making them feel like you doubt their ability or worth to get into the elite schools? That's how my son reacts in these conversations. Yeah. I think in your case, you're just so good of an advocate that you get in, you get in this mode, and you're like, you're so good at making an argument and he is so smart, your son, that he probably already knows what you're going to say, and he's already tuned you out. It's very hard when it's a parent, son or parent-daughter type of thing. I think the only way to really do this, and we've not perfected this at all, although we don't have a kid like Charlie. Well, Sammy might be. But I think the best way is not for us, parents, to push this information on them. It's to kind of pull them toward it. So it could be like, check out these stats, or there's no reason to talk to him about it if he does not get in. Hopefully he does get into his top choice school. But if that happens, there's going to be some. If he doesn't get in, there'll be some natural period of mourning or sulking or whatever. That's not the right time to bring it up either. But strategically, leaving an article. There will be all these articles about how Warren Buffett and everyone else did not get into the top choice schools. Strategically leaving that around, so he can see that might be a little consolation. But whatever you do, I don't think anything really happens until August, when he and every kid goes to college. And then, but it's something, something happens before that. They, maybe they buy the hoodie or the keychain and flip it around school at the end of senior year. But I think most of the time it'll just sort of naturally happen where they do get psyched. They start looking forward to where they're going, and you won't necessarily have to have that type of conversation. Although you're right, and you should have it. And I'm totally on the same page as you. But when Jean gets on a roll, she's got very impressive rhetorical skills. All right, any other questions here? Oh, that's so funny. Jean says, 30 years out, and I'm still asked where I went to law school. Yeah. We'll just leave that dangling out there. It's a mystery. Let's not tell anyone. Jennifer just noticed the Star Trek mug. All right, and her husband has the same one.
Was that?
Yeah, it's back there. That's from the Academy. It's part of the whole collegiate higher education thing. That's from Starfleet Academy. It's not really Star Trek necessarily. It is related though. Yeah. All right. So, any other questions before we fake name I am Storm. Wondering if there's any prep to teach kids how to adjust. Yeah, it's called life.
Well, you know what? I do think, in all honesty, if you at least have the conversation that I just had with you about this, that yes, it is
with
a great
name I am Storm.
With what I just said a few minutes ago.
Oh.
I think just putting an awareness in a kid's head that while that's true, college can be the best time of your life and you meet these wonderful people, and it doesn't happen the minute you touch down and your feet hit the ground and you sleep your first night in your college dorm. It takes time, like anything else, to organically develop an attachment and a relationship with other people and your new environment and your new course load and your new time management requirements, since you are adjusting from a very regimented secondary schooling, 8 periods, 9 periods a day, and then all your time
shuffling
is accounted
around
for.
from class
exactly.
to class, then activities.
And now your time is all yours to mold the clay as you wish.
Yeah.
And
that's a big issue for a lot of kids.
It is.
Especially kids who go
is.
to parochial schools where it's like do. They get to college, they have all this free time.
You don't need to. Right. You need to. Everyone's skill in that department is tested in their first year of college. So.
What? The skill of awkward silence also tested on the show.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Well, she was going to say something profound. I feel like
I was building.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's an open loop. It's an itch you can't scratch.
It's gonna come back to me.
All right. Well, we're gonna go off the air. We'll leave that dangling out there. If you want to hear the rest of what Pearl had to say, come back next week for College Talk.
It's like Columbo.
No, it's not.
Sometimes.
They do like a two-parter. You mean?
Sometimes.
Well, Columbo's like,
Rare.
one more thing. When he goes to leave, he's like,
right, exactly.
Let me ask you. Yeah. Pearl's like Columbo, but no wrinkled khaki overcoat. And,
might as well have one.
And less of a 5 o'clock show. No, much cuter.
Thank you.
And not a cigar girl either.
No.
Yes. Okay, so let's wrap up here. This is going downhill rapidly. And I'm just looking for last final comments here. Ha ha ha. Funny. Yeah, Gene agrees about where you go to law school. Really important. I would actually say, just because of what I've noticed, just to sum up here about law school, what I've noticed about numbers, without overstating it, if you're not going to a great law school, either a highly ranked top 25 law school or a local law school that has a great pipeline into local jobs, I would, if you can't get into either of those two categories, I would strongly reconsider going to law school at all.
Totally agreed.
Yeah. If you can't get into a school that's going to, that is going to give you a leg up.
Correct.
Because there's a lot of, that's one of those fields. It's a perfect example of a field that is changing right now. A lot of
like
the legal stuff, absolutely. A lot of legal stuff is being outsourced overseas. It's being automated, with artificial intelligence. There's going to be a lot of changes in that field, not only, but particularly in that field, which means there's going to be there's going to be less demand for certain types of high-paying legal jobs. So be very careful about before you plunge into that.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Thanks for watching this episode of College Talk Tuesday. We will be back next week, 12 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, right here on the College Success Show. College Success for Less, College Success Without Stress. Pearl and Andy Lockwood, we're signing off. Thanks for watching. Talk to you soon. Say bye.
Bye.
Still awkward.
A little.
All right. Skito.